just like to welcome you all to Memoir Church today. One of my favorite days of the month, the first Sunday. Happy September, everybody! So today we're going to be hearing from Sarah from her dance memoir, Dancing Downstream. So welcome, 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 and thank you for coming. And without further ado, I would like to bring on the lovely Sarah Pletts. Hi,
Hello,
Sarah.
hello. Oh, am I muted? No. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming.
It's so
Thank you.
great to have you here. This is
Thank
so
you.
lovely. Um, Sarah, I was thinking of you today with such love in my heart, and you're such an inspiration to me because you've done work all over the world, and you're a multi artist. You know, you're multimedia. You do visual art, Pratt Institute, whoop whoop, and you're a dancer, you're a writer, you're a playwright, you're a filmmaker. I just wondering if there's anything you don't do. Tightrope walking, perhaps. um, so I came up with a little moniker for you. I thought artistic adventurous because you just keep doing your art and keep finding ways to do it in a world that doesn't really always support us artists in the best way financially and also in ways where we can feel our best. So how do you keeping on as an artist in the world as it is in your seventh decade?
It's in here. You're going to hear about that. I just keep going.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll find out what keeps her going on, keeps her moving. Um, what are you working on right now?
I just sent a screenplay I've worked on 25 years to LA to a composer who wants to do the score. It's about for years I'd hear about King Arthur and I'd see something about him being this fierce warrior and I'd go, nah. I don't know why, but I just go, nah. And then I started collecting all these resources about who he might have really been. So I got very curious about his parents. So the script is actually called Arthur's Mother.
So you've been teaching. I know you went to Morro Bay for a while and you were teaching a sketch class. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a sketchbook. So it was about writing and painting.
I'm just always fascinated at, also for myself because I do what you do. I don't have all the juicy talents and tricks in my bag, but I'm always inspired by people who keep doing their art without succumbing to doing something that they maybe weren't meant to do to make a dollar. And so I just, that's why I call you inspiring and the artistic adventurous. I'm so happy to be having you here at Memoir Church to do your dancing downstream. And I'm going to get myself out of here and let you take over.
Thank you. So this is the foreword to Dancing Downstream and the subtitle Journey of the North American Performer and Activist. Me. Okay. Downstream, a fellow artist asked me one night. Yes, I answered. People say artists go against the flow, but that's not always true. Those of us doing what's good for creatures and the earth are moving in a deep undercurrent with the flow. I've often been asked, how do you do what you do, like you just did, Suze? This book is my response. My family gave me much, but didn't know about dancing a solo in Monte Carlo and speaking on Radio Riviera to help fund Tchaikovsky's orchestra from St. Petersburg, Russia, nor could they show me how to lead an opening pre-ceremony for the Utah Olympics. But I was given a chance and I took it to do those things. And I did what's written here, not because I could buy my way, but because I went where I needed to go, often traveling on a wing and a prayer and a little cash and no credit card. I've held books about magic to my heart since I was a kid. And the words I love best link the supposed separate worlds of energy and matter, words that make uncommon knowledge integral to everyday life are my favorite. And I trust this book will identify synergistic magnetic resonance in everything. For me, dance can engulf an entire concert hall in its present moment and then vanish, but wax and wane eternal like our moon. The courage to create freely is the act on earth I most revere. And these memoirs, well, they're drawn from memory, date books, and journals, but consequently, the recollections, they jump around in time. When I started writing this, I felt sadness and an overwhelming desire for my family to find loving connection. We're still trying.
Mm.
The illusion that people are separate from each other and other living things has enslaved us for ages. We're sentient beings webbed to everything. It's paramount that as humans evolving on Earth, we in this industrialized world make changes. A simple look at the oxygen depletion figure tells us this. So, respect, it seems to me, respect for the natural environment is our Elysium key, our key to survival. Our continuation for me must include the relationship to each other, the living kingdoms, and the earth. This book chronicles how that discovery has been for me, and lifting my own veils of separation has left me sometimes peaceful, but completely distraught, like over and over. I just often feel torn from everything I was taught. But the truth is, if I embrace that inner relationship that comes up, it sustains me. So when I was asked to address the graduate medical school at the University of New England, right near here, actually, in the spring of 1999, I was stunned. I mean, I was leading a yoga class. Granted, my grandfather was a doctor, my great grandfather a veterinarian, and my sister's an endocrinologist, but I'm a performing artist. I rehearsed that 45-minute presentation for 2 months. Man, I was so nervous. But that showed me that dancing has vastly increased my awareness of my body. So, like Shakespeare tells us, I told those medical students in that talk, it's our responsibility. And I told them 3 times, Shakespeare says, it's our responsibility to tell everyone that we are completely capable of healing anything in any moment, no matter how serious the disease. And this is really important for doctors because people rely on them so much. But my deepest driving personal force for my writing is to remember that energetic healing is traditional, it's ancient, it's in us. Oh, I wish to shift the concept of the body as a machine with parts back to the reality of our highly tuned, energy based physical form.
Hmm.
In these times, certain buildings are regarded as temples. Human beings enter those buildings to practice in a sacred way, sometimes with and sometimes without regard to nature. But by listening to myself instead of popular culture, I discovered that my body is my own living temple. I busted myself and I did an inner intervention. Time has served as a hard lesson for learning. And so I must trust that all the experience that comes can lead to compassionate transformation. I love the Iroquois wisdom that the real boss is the great, magnificent good.
Hmm.
Integration, what a concept. Whether I'm facing my flaring temper, smelling rotting seafood in the dumpster across the street on a hot day in the coast of Maine, or grasping the horrifying reality of so many sacrificed humans in a war, I often balk like a mule. Oh God, I'm not one with that. But one night at dinner, a friend was talking. I said, "Well, but I am one with everything. But how do I live in that? When I allow my reluctance to overpower an ability to respond. I get really depressed. I lose my self-respect and my respect for others. And yet the truth is, I get relief in accepting a gigantic blueprint that's larger than the greatest earthly architect has ever done. And when they do draw it big, like architect Buckminster Fuller, I can't comprehend it. It takes a while. But I got to look into Bucky's eyes at a friend's house in the Roaring Fork Valley in Colorado in the mid 80s. And I listened to him describe spaceship Earth. He has such wisdom and the bliss of a child. He explained to me that we humans are steering our planet like a vehicle, huh? Our collective consciousness is that influential. We've changed the position of Earth in the orbit. Our consciousness has changed it. Meeting him made me try to remember, man, what I do matters. So my relationship with nature is what has inspired me to keep dancing. And that has been my constant support. That's been my only support system. Just go get in the studio, Sarah. So one day it was the wind that said to me, you can show the beauty you see through your dancing. I'm like, huh? Dancing? So anyway, I've been a conduit for the living arts and it's provided me with what I keep going by. But I insist on no harm, like cutting off an ear. No, I want to build a bridge. And sometimes I have had to cling to my own innocence like a drowning man to a wooden plank in a sea of acclaim for good business, no matter what it hurt or how much damage it was doing, clinging to that board. And though the challenges seem endless, strength and generosity continues to try to live in my heart. It continues this life to be a journey. Here inside Jeannie, you really helped me with that this week. And this constant practice to force myself to say yes to dancing. It's not a silly thing, it's everything. I studied Russian ballet in Miami with Thomas Armour from the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo. I performed with the Sacred Dance Guild of Miami with Diana and Paul Avery, and Diana's niece, Joan Baez, sang. It was a recording, but she sang to my first solo.
Mm.
And then I went to college in New York City, Pratt Institute, on a scholarship because my parents were broke because my dad stood up to the Kennedys. My dance instructors in New York were some of the finest: Pauline Tish, Jamie Cunningham, Merce Cunningham, June Finch, Barbara Fallis, the New York School of Ballet, Zena Romette, and Dan Wagner. They spent so many hours refining the craft of movement for me, and it moved me into the temple of my body. So, and then something else surprising happened. In 1991, His Holiness the Dalai Lama came to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and he redirected my life. I was there for a performance conference, and he took me really back into an earth-based reality and being with Native American indigenous healer. So because my mother's adopted, I felt I had a tribe, a native tribe, and I looked and looked for it. And then I did a grand entry in a dance in outside Santa Fe, and two Cherokee medicine men stopped and said, "You have native light." Wow, I didn't know that. I was dancing for my Celtic ancestors. So these two men said that I have native lineage and therefore native heritage. But when I walked into the Penobscot Museum on Indian Island, Maine, I looked like the women. I found my North American tribe. And they and you all, Suze, Jean, all of you that work with me here, and the animals show me how to live in a sacred way. I mean, I created a natural water cycle poster for the Los Angeles school system. And I've hounded producers and directors of cultural institutions from San Francisco to London as an active environmentalist for half a century. Ooh, there she comes again. Get
Mm.
her out, get her out, show her out. I am blessed also to possess the gifts of writing, drawing, and painting. And I guide active meditation, modern dance, and yoga in locations around the globe, as well as perform dance theater work. This book is a description from my perspective only, and I encourage you to resonate with just what serves you. And I really want to thank the students in my classes for helping me concentrate on each beloved part of our bodies one at a time. Then there's a long page of all the people, many people who've helped. Many of you are here. But then at the end of the intro, I say, most of all, I'm deeply grateful to dear friends because I know they feel strange with me, but they still choose to love and accept my unusual way of life with generosity. And I have to thank my mother and dad, Janet and Donald, because they're from the wild, rocky coast of Maine. It's a good thing neither of you were ever swayed too far from the general sea of human thought as it kept trying to land on shore. His grace spirit gave you minds of your own, which you embraced wholeheartedly. My mom and dad held on to their own lives like bulldogs. And they never let go. And I really think those who love me anyway, no matter how odd it may seem, you know who you are. Some of you are here today. You are my link to life on earth. Please keep loving me. Okay, so then you get one short chapter, and I just picked one random. Didn't know I was coming to Maine, and it's chapter 8, Finding the House of Mermaids and Mermen on a Maine tide pool. That's my time doing here. Okay.
You're good. You go. I'll stop you if you go too long.
Okay. So the puzzle of a harbor in Maine stares back at me from a store shelf. In spite of all the worldly infusions to my precious home of Aspen, I've lived there. It was my home for 45 years. Carl's Pharmacy is still on a corner on Main Street. Oh, the soda fountain downstairs is gone, but the rest of the general store remains. Lots of, regular drugstore stuff with small grocery in the back and a wonders upstairs. Toys, stationery, art supplies, sewing goods, games, gadgets, and the best costumes ever for Halloween. Okay, so Carl's is still on the corner like it was that first day in 76 when a friend drove me into town. All these years later, when I wrote this 10 years ago, Mother and I and many others have completed the 5th annual land council that we organized. The council was a gathering of citizens, local and regional officials, and political leaders, and related environmental organizations, and Native Americans from the Ute, Mohawk, and Hopi, and Lakota Sioux. We made a film of it, which that's the one I took around to 5 countries. And then my mother received an elk drum. She was so happy. It really meant a lot to her. And in spite of her dubious birth origin, she found out she was adopted when she was 50. Both of my parents have an innate response to Native American traditions. Interesting. So back to the Carl's Pharmacy puzzle shelf in the corner store. It was probably a Monday or Tuesday, and I took one of those rare moments of sheer unattached pleasure, and I found myself looking at puzzles. I'd taken to mindlessly putting them together for a form of kind of meditation, relaxation. But the subject, of course, was always important. So this day, it was a picturesque Maine harbor. And since my parents, I told you already, were from there, I had heard tons of stories about Maine. Ooh, the farm cow Bessie on that ocean sprayed coast. Mom getting her best friend locked in the stand-up freezer, trying to steal pies. Mom, how did you leave her in there? Well, she didn't die. And then trips, this is where my theater came. My grandmother on her side loved the theater and took mom down to Boston in the 30s. And to add to this, along with the mysterious adoption, we would go through all these pictures. Well, they weren't your parents and they didn't tell you. And how did that happen? Anyway, losing the farm was the worst memory. And my grandfather had become addicted to morphine after a doctor prescribed it. He had taken out a second mortgage, which he couldn't pay back. And that was to support his habit. And mom remembered being forced to drive away from the beloved farmhouse, leaving all her toys and familiar play areas behind. And then there was my dad. He was funnier about it. He sold ladies' home journals for a penny. Penny. And he drove the bakery truck at 13 without a license, all the way down to Bailey's Island. And he ate way too many donuts in the truck. We got a little hefty. And my grandfather was a small town doctor. He'd get the sleigh out of the barn and shovel the snow and put my dad in the front when he was 5. And my grandmother would take a brick out from the fire and put it under their feet. Yeah, and 3 generations that went to Bowdoin College. But I was born in Boston. And I spent my early childhoods in Kennebuck on the beach where Suze now swims. Oh my God. Oh, okay. But Maine was mostly my interpretation of my parents' memories. What about me? And the family blood, of course, from Maine that was pulsing through me. They're born in this homeland. They come from a rocky coastline flanked by a cold, vibrant sea. And this rugged terrain was embedded in their single mindfulness. You know, politically, it was said for more than a century, as goes Maine, so goes the nation. My ancestors were accustomed to doing it their way. So that afternoon in August, sitting at mom's table in Aspen, putting the puzzle together, I'm looking at that harbor and I unconsciously began to construct my next phase of life. And after that, I called my cousin in Bath and I asked, can I stay at Aunt Dora's cottage on Mother's Beach? And we talked about the house, for years. And over the phone, she said, yeah, in that old way I'd forgotten. So moving to hear her accent. I remembered it from childhood. So we made the family beach house arrangement, and that was enough to move me back all the way across to the East Coast from the Rockies back to where I come from. And I am, after all, my father's daughter. So when I arrived at the Portland International Jet Port, back then there were 2 flights, one to Canada and one to England, which made it international. But love, I love the small scale of the airport. Oh, and being in my Aunt Dora's house, wow, the kitchen is so big that you can wash a dog in a tub, have the table set, and be watching the biscuits rising in the oven at the same time. And look out at the sea. Oh, it was heaven. That the house isn't outfitted for the cold and has never been renovated. Boy, those upscale neighbors don't like that too much. But anyway, so I had to move and I heard the name of a town and I drove out there to Bitterfoot Pool on that first day, I spotted a little red house and it sat on stilts in the tide pool and it called my name. I saw the real estate's name. The office was just down the road. I was ready to sign a lease right away. At the salt air, the view, I was in ecstasy. I could have it for 10 months. I had to move out in July and August. And when I drove back to sign the lease, That whole backyard that had been blue water was mud. Said to the, I was so embarrassed. I said to the real estate agent, "The water gonna come back?" Oh man, did he think I was a landlubber? Anyway, yeah, said twice a day, every day. Asked about that a lot later. But watching and feeling the tide changed me. It put me back in flow because that's the water that comes and goes, and it's the moon that's orchestrating that. Whoa, that was what enraptured my mother and father in their youth. And I found out that that's what had put the light in their eyes. But my life's not theirs. So it was tough, actually, embracing my heritage, but trying to figure out what suited me and what didn't. There were really tough moments, and what would often begin as a powerful reaction to an event and a piece of my family heritage, it would take a while, but it would slowly bring me into a more balanced relationship to myself. So, potency. By embracing my ancestry, I found I lacked emotional potency. No, I had it. Inside, I had it. But what was missing was I couldn't express it off stage. I could do it on stage. Oh, it's hard to do 32 perfect fouettes and you do the turn and you raise up on your leg and you woo, 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 and the audience claps and land perfectly centered. Did I express myself to a regular person? No. So for almost 60 years, I ran from anyone who rejected me. And so thus begins in late in life this process of expressing myself. Okay, here's an example. I ran into the hired Aspen theater director after he dismissed my proposal for a short play. I was sad, perplexed, and hurt. I mean, I'd helped start that theater and helped fund it for 30 years. Now, I realize corporate North American protocol does whatever it wants and does, regardless of who the founders are. But summer had arrived. Was I supposed to do it or not? And then I saw an outdoor sign with the 3 plays that had been chosen. I was like, so when I saw him in a so-called meeting of the arts in City Hall, it wasn't about the arts, it was about business. I asked him, when are you going to notify the playwrights whose plays weren't picked? I don't have to do that, he barked. We were walking out of the building and he practically tried to sweep me out of his way with his stocky arm. He didn't slow down a bit. I ran in front of him. I turned to face him directly and I barked back, "Sir, we are not done here yet." No, in fact, I won't be done with expressing what matters on or off stage until I die. And even then, is fading allowed in heaven?
Oh, beautiful, Sarah. Thank you so much. Wow. What a life and what a life in